recording.
Awesome.
Hello and welcome back to the second episode of the Capture the World podcast.
Episode 2.
Yep.
Exciting.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking
So far.
Today we're going to be talking about stage performances, and we do have a guest coming on today. And she has been part of many stage performances, currently going to school for ballet.
Akron University? Is it a university?
I don't...
Akron in Ohio.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a university or what. Obviously, she's not there now because of the whole coronavirus shutdown.
Yes.
But she is still in school for ballet.
Yep. And so I guess I have a new thing we're adding to the show. And to set the mood, I'm going to be randomly generating a word, an adjective. And that's going to set the tone of the podcast. And we're going to try this out. If we don't like it or if nobody likes it, then we won't continue with it. But let me do this.
I thought you said we were going to generate it when she called, though.
Yeah, I need to just get it ready.
Okay.
But
so yeah, stage production. I have only personally been in one professional stage production. It was The Music Man. I was Marcellus. Leaf was in that same production. He was The Music Man. Harold Hill.
Yep. Harold Hill.
And what else have you been in, Leaf? Remind me.
I've been in a variety act. That was my first year doing at the performing arts school. Then the second year we did Fiddler on the Roof.
And then before all this with the professional school and stuff, our two families, the kids, put on home productions. We did lots of things. We did Oliver twice, actually. We did Mary Poppins also twice. We did Annie twice. We love doing musicals over again. We also did Les Mis. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Lots of things. It was lots of fun.
Oh yeah. Stage production is one of those things that I absolutely love, and I want to continue doing.
Oh, you forgot to mention your voice performance.
Oh yeah, I've been in a voice performance.
I was going to be in one this year, but of course, coronavirus shutdown canceled that too.
And your
Yay!
Easter.
What?
And your Easter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, that thing.
I know, guys. He has a different Easter than all of us. Orthodox Church. Well, at least you have a much better Easter celebration than, like, your average Easter celebration, I think. From what I've heard, I haven't been to one, but...
Let's not get too far. No, that's a controversial topic.
Yeah, so as I said before, I really, really enjoy stage production. And I've been in multiple. And I know when some people get on stage, they get really nervous. I've seen this a lot.
Mm-hmm. Stage fright.
Yeah,
very
stage
common.
fright. Oh, very.
It takes time to get over.
Oh, big time.
I was so nervous for our first home production in front of our family. I broke down and cried.
Hey, you know what? We all start somewhere. But
I was like 6 years old though, so
yeah.
In my defense.
And I mean, you didn't know half the audience. Half of that was my family. But that's something I've never really suffered from.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're just so. What's the word? Extreme, I guess. You're very confident. You're very.
I am confident to
exuberant.
A point where sometimes it's actually bad to be confident.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting seeing stage fright like that, because I've never really experienced it. But I was talking with somebody at her school, and this is Tori, and she was talking about it. And when she was younger, she definitely had it, but she's been doing ballet forever, and now has the same exact reaction I do, you do, which is just excitement.
Right.
And
I mean, for Music Man, I was a little bit nervous before getting on stage, but once I got on stage, it just went away.
There's that moment where you click and you become your character, or you really get into the dance, or you, I would even say with singing, you get into character too.
Oh, definitely. Singing has emotion in it. It's not just dry. It's not dry. It has emotion. It has personality, for lack of a better word, the song and your singing.
Yeah. Well, for instance, would you rather have somebody with no personality singing a song, but like super dry, but they were hitting the notes perfectly? Or would you rather be around a campfire with a big group of friends, somebody strumming the guitar, and everybody just going for it?
I mean, that was pretty much last night.
Yeah. Don't worry, we're not weed smokers. That's what it sounds like. But no, I feel like that. I mean, soul, that emotion part of it is half of the music, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in our voice lessons, hasn't the instructor ever told you add more personality, more emotion into the song?
I've never gotten that comment.
Oh, okay. I'm not surprised. I've gotten it a couple times.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for new singers, that's definitely a big thing. I had been singing before that, and then just my personality, I'm not likely to get that comment. But I thought, let's get on our guest.
Okie dokie.
Aloha, Sarah.
Hello there.
Hi, long time no see.
Yeah, we don't have video on, so
No, we don't.
we're just doing audio.
Okay, that is fine.
Yeah, we should. All right, it looks like...
So, just as a disclaimer, the whole word generator thing was completely Leaf's idea, and I'm skeptical of how well it will work.
Okay. Okay.
Let me get a word.
Interesting if the generator comes out with a word like voluptuous or something. I don't know.
Cultured.
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 How are
Very
we-
interesting.
Cultured. Okay.
I'm
We
not
will try
cultured,
this.
but
I'm far from cultured.
yeah.
That is true.
Thank you. That's a compliment.
So we introduced this. We introduced
Okay.
you a little bit.
A little bit. Introduce yourself more.
Yeah,
first.
we need an explanation of who you are, what you're doing with your life. You know, that sort of basic
Yeah.
rundown.
Yeah, the basics. Well, my name is Sarah, and I am a dancer currently by profession, I suppose. I've been dancing for many, many years, and am most recently a student at the University of Akron in Ohio as a dance major. I am currently home, though, of course, because of COVID-19,
Yay,
but
COVID.
we're making the best of it.
Yeah.
And that's about all, yeah.
Awesome.
And I know you guys somewhat mutually, actually, and then ended up getting to know you guys a lot better through theater that we've been in together.
So you just mentioned school and going online. What is it like to go online for a dance major? I mean, I know it's pretty easy for most people to go online, but what's the experience like for you?
She died.
Sarah, are you there? Are you dead?
I am there.
Oh, did you
I
get
am not dead.
Did you get any of that?
No, I did not. You
Oh.
guys cut out after I stopped talking.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So with all the classes going online, I know that's fairly easy for most people, like liberal arts, history, whatever. But for dance, that's
Yeah.
quite a bit different. How is your school coping with that?
It's definitely on a professor by professor basis, what they're comfortable with, and what they're able to do. This semester, I was in 2 technique courses, which are the type of courses where I would just go in and take class, and that's most of your grade. And for my modern class, they've incorporated some Zoom meetings, so we're essentially taking class via like a live video call.
Okay.
And other than that, a lot of professors are really making up for the lack of in-class time with written work. So that's actually been pretty interesting. We've been doing a lot of analytical type writings based on viewing dance and reflecting on what we've worked on so far this semester.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting way to do that, because I was so confused as how you would go online with a dance class, but there is more to dance than just
Doing it.
So, okay,
Yes.
I see that now. Yeah, okay, that's really cool. Sorry, my speaker's making funny noises. All right. So, no, I guess if you have a question before we get really into the meat of everything, anything you want to ask.
Well, can you talk a little bit about the stage productions you've been in?
Oh, yeah. So, do you want me to focus more on what I've done so far in college or just kind of in general? There's
Just
been a
kind
lot.
of in general, because you've done lots of different
Yeah.
varieties, right?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of different I've done a lot of different shows in the past. I think stage production, it definitely depends on what type of show you're talking about. I've had experience in musical theater type productions, which are obviously going to be a lot different from a classical ballet versus a contemporary show. So, definitely I've found in the past that the production part is definitely a lot more intense when it comes to musical theater type things. There's a lot more involved in all of it. And I think that there's a lot more collaboration that happens between the dancers, whether you're dancing or you're actually participating in the acting and the singing. There's a lot more collaboration between you and the people who are in charge of more of the production, I think, than you'd get in a dance space.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Oh, I love that question. I have had a very interesting experience since being in college because I think a lot of the people who are dance majors don't have a lot of experience in musical theater and working with the more production team that I think we've had the opportunity to have.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it can definitely be very separate. I know a lot of dancers who don't really know exactly what goes on behind the scenes and haven't had relationships with, your techies or the lighting crew or the people who are filming and taking pictures. And it's a lot more of, you show up and you perform. And it's definitely an interesting experience. And I've found that what I bring with me from my experience is a little different from some other people.
Yeah, well, just from when did I last year, late last year, I filmed the ballet that you were in, Sarah, the Nutcracker. And I noticed the people I knew from musical theater, they just seemed a little more in tune with everything going on. Whereas there were a few people there who were just very dance focused, and they would sit down, they'd do their thing, and then they'd get on stage and dance, and that was literally it.
Yeah, I also noticed that the people who did musical theater seemed a little bit more chill and relaxed and confident about the performance, doing the performance.
Yeah. Especially, I don't know, I wonder if having like a show like the Nutcracker, Sarah, with most ballets, do you think the Nutcracker, how does it compare in level of acting? Like how much acting there is in that ballet?
I think it really depends on the age of your dancers, I think, but overall, I mean, it's a classical ballet. It's set to classical music, and there are even the steps. There are versions that are just repeated year after year after year that are the same steps over and over again. So I think especially with classical ballet and for schools or dance studios who do it year after year, I think the acting element can definitely get overlooked and can get a little bit dry because there is so much mime incorporated into classical ballet with simply the way that you hold yourself or the way that you move your arms. There are specific movements that mean certain things. They are actually mime is what they are inspired by. And I feel like the acting can definitely get a little bit dry, especially if you're coming from a school that hasn't had musical theater training.
Yeah.
And I know, especially because the Nutcracker is such a classic piece in the sets and the costumes, that for an audience, I think that tends to be enough for them, is just like the beauty of the show. And they don't necessarily come there to be wowed by a really emotional story, I suppose.
I mean, yeah, even when I saw this professionally done in Syracuse, the Nutcracker, I should say, I felt like there was definitely more acting than in non-professional versions, but I still thought that when I was younger, my impression was this acting is kind of dry, but as you said, those costumes were so enthralling that's what I was looking at basically.
Yeah, it definitely all comes down to the production of it. And it depends on the show, of course, because you'll have classical ballets like Romeo and Juliet, which is obviously a beautiful, I mean, it's a tragic, but very beautiful, like Shakespearean story. It's not Shakespearean, it is Shakespeare. And there's a lot that goes into the character development of that, especially professionals who put hours upon hours upon hours into character development for that piece, even though you're just dancing. There is a difference between what is required to portray, say, Clara, who is a girl who, you know, is playing with her toys essentially throughout the show, whereas you've got Juliet, who is this tragic female character who is just completely destroyed by love.
Yeah.
It really depends on the piece, definitely.
So, on this note, I'm gonna bring in our word harmonious. Or wait,
Okay.
Yes, that's what it was.
No. Cultured.
Was it
Cultured.
cultural?
Sorry, cultured.
I thought
Sorry.
it was cultured.
I know.
Yeah, it's cultured. Leaf is making stuff up again.
Yeah, I'm making stuff up again. Okay, so
Okay.
On the note of cultured, there. Slight interruption. So you have done some modern dances at school.
I have.
So
I have.
when I was taught modern dance by you, I'm like, wow, you're really good at this, because I never really did any of that. But what level would you put yourself at compared to others at school in, modern dance?
Yeah, I love that you bring this up. It's very interesting because at school, I'm not in one of the highest levels of modern. I'm about in the middle, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing considering I'm currently a freshman. But compared to some of the dancers who I have met and gotten to interact with, I definitely fall short in that area, and it's something that I'm trying to improve. But when I come back to my studio that, of course, trained me in fantastic classical ballet technique, the amount of modern experience that I have far surpasses some of what we're given at our studio, which is a really cool opportunity that I can bring back to people.
Yeah.
I think that the concept of modern dance is a little bit different from the contemporary and lyrical that I had taken before.
Mm-hmm.
Modern dance actually, it's a collection of different codified techniques. So, for example, in ballet, you should point your toes anytime they're lifted off the ground, and
yeah,
you're in a generally rotated position of the hips all the time, and there's just certain parts of it that are just the technique, and it's what makes it so beautiful and so excellent if people can perform it well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with modern. You hold your weight differently, your arms are in a different position. You just hold yourself very differently, and the way that you move obviously is affected by that. And so there were various choreographers that came forward in the early 20th century who developed all of these different modern techniques, and that's what I'm studying at school right now, which is really, really cool to have that knowledge in my back pocket now.
Okay, so that's interesting. Early 20th century. I would not think that early as the start of modern dance, but I guess, it had to start sometime.
Yeah, actually, what's really cool about modern dance is that it is truly American. The beginnings of modern dance happened in America, whereas we have Balanchine ballet here, which is the type of ballet that Balanchine came up with. However, ballet started in Russia and France and Europe in general, and was really developed there, whereas modern dance is American, which is really cool, actually.
That is cool. I mean, we have, the hot dog, but now we have, I did not know we had, no, Germany invented the hot dog.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have the dab. Yeah. That's something to be proud of.
We have modern... Well, that's actually really cool that we created modern dance. I wonder if that has to do something with our entertainment culture here. Like, we are the entertainment hub of the world. And I wonder if that
Yeah.
has to do with has to do with that development.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I love that we're talking about this. I'm actually in a 20th century dance history course right now, so it's all fresh in my brain.
Okay.
But the very beginnings of modern dance actually came out of just a general rejection of the ballet technique, as well as the Delse Art movement, which is something you might be mildly familiar with because I know we all just recently performed in the Music Man.
Yes.
That incorporates elements of the Delse Art movement, which was essentially poses and like this physical culture that started to arise in America, especially within like middle-aged women. And people just got really interested in it, and they got interested in this idea of movement, and that it was here, we can relate it to culture. It was a cultural thing, and it made people feel like some believed that it would sort of elevate your spirituality. There was also, at that time, Americans were really, really obsessed with Greek culture, which is part of why we have like that scene in The Music Man with, the Grecian urns. It was just something that seemed to be, it was like high class, cultural, just the epitome of class was this Greek culture idea and this physical culture that started to arise. And out of there, we got the very first choreographers who started to come up with this modern dance that was, a rejection of ballet and a rejection of technique, and was just very a lot more natural pedestrian movement.
There's an interesting movie on this, sort of. It takes place in the UK, and it's called The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Oh, I have yet to see that.
Have you seen that?
I've seen the TV show.
Hang on, not
I've seen the TV show.
I'm thinking of another one too.
Oh,
I think you're thinking something different.
That's the American one.
I've seen the TV show, but I don't think. Yeah, it's American.
That's American. It's hang on. It's about
Come on, you do this.
I'm really bad with the names. I watched it, Noah. It's
Have I seen it?
Around World War World War II, and there is you haven't seen it.
Oh.
I talked about it. It was about like nude women posing on stage.
You have not told me about this.
Yes, I have.
No, I don't think you've told me about a movie with nude women posing on stage.
If I can't think of it, the name will be up on the screen here, so just keep that in mind.
Watching the video.
But for those watching the video, anyhow, it was about, well, basically this elderly lady wanted to start a theater company, and she bought a theater, and she wanted to put on shows with nude dancers, but that was too lewd back in the late 30s. She got inspiration from France and the US and their cultures of performance, and ended up doing tableaus of nude women. And that was allowed because they weren't moving. It was like statues. And there was that Greek aspect to it too.
So strange.
Yeah.
But
that's really interesting. It seemed to be like the whole world at that time was just for some reason extremely obsessed with Greek culture. It actually ended up, we talk a lot about universalist ideas, which is just ideals of that time that were just generally a culturally accepted, that like this is cool kind of idea. And one of the very big ones around that time, like mid-century, was Greek culture.
which is kind of weird. Actually, you know what? No, that's not weird, because the Greeks, weren't they the first ones to really popularize theater?
Yeah.
Like they would.
Yeah.
And then the Romans stole it from them.
Yeah.
So backtracking a little bit here, Sarah, you've now talked about how you have experience in several fields such as musical theater, classical ballet, contemporary dance. Can you talk a little bit about like the differences and similarities between each of them in the learning aspect and the performing aspect?
Ooh, yes, I can. So definitely, I I've done classical ballet for the longest, of course, as a lot of ballet dancers. You start with that. It's like a good starting place as a dance technique, and began when I was very little. The learning process for classical ballet is definitely, I would say, the most intense. The technique is unfortunately based around a lot of things that your body anatomically shouldn't do, which is part of why, yeah, which is part of why they start people so early. I had a conversation with someone in the medical field somewhat recently, and they were talking about ballet, and I was like, yeah, it's actually really interesting because they start you off super young, so that like since your bones aren't fully developed, then like your hips kind of just fuse in like an outward position, and they were just horrified.
That's so funny.
But it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. You just kind of train yourself to work in that way.
Oh.
And it can definitely be very intense depending on what teachers you're given, and what kind of technique that they follow. I studied Vaganova, which is like the Russian technique, and there's other techniques, some that require almost some studios follow like an ABT curriculum that requires like tests, and you take exams, and it's all about what steps you can do and how you can perform them, and just kind of working up that way. So it really depends.
That's so interesting.
But yeah, and as far as performing it, I think that a lot of the performance of classical ballet really tends to happen once you're a little bit older, because it takes so long to develop the technique to a point where you can perform it in a way that is, I would say, interesting.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
even the smallest things are really difficult to master. So I think once you're older, you really start to get into performing that style for it to look really technically good. And then of course you have point shoes that come in, which add a whole new level to the technique, which is really fun. But yeah, definitely. I have performed some classical ballet, and been in some classical ballets that I'm very, very excited to see as I perform more, as I've advanced, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then the musical theater is just so much fun. It's so much fun. I think that musical theater, although you can take classes in the style, it's really just learning pieces and learning repertoire, and watching musical theater and learning those dance numbers, because you're gonna figure out so much more about the patterns and the way that phrases of movement are built, as opposed to just kind of learning step by step.
Yeah.
And you really just get so much experience from performing, and I'm sure both of you can attest to that.
Definitely.
You can practice a step turn all day, but it's not going to do you any good unless you know what it goes into and how to come out of it and how to keep moving.
Yeah, and how to keep singing while doing that.
Right.
Exactly. That's a whole other thing. I think studios who maybe do a musical theater class, but you're not actively in a show, you have to learn how to sing while you dance, which is also difficult. It adds a whole new level.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's.
And then that again comes with age, because as a female, you learn how to do all of this, and then you have to learn how to do it in heels. So that's another element of as you get older and as you advance, you'll learn how to do that, which is fun.
I don't know how some of these like 50s, 60s musicals, how those women dance in heels, like those 4-inch, 5-inch heels. I'm just stunned.
And then that dancing while singing thing, we were, of course, as you know, Sarah, going to be in Oliver, which has now been postponed or canceled, not really sure which. But even in the number Papa, even just myself, I hardly do any dancing, just sing the choruses. By the time the number's over, I'm out of breath. It's like, how doesn't Nancy pass out?
Yeah, that's
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
I'm completely out of that. That at the end, I am exhausted, and then I hit the last note, and then I just like, I gotta get off stage now.
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to be drunk, so luckily you can just collapse into a chair.
That is convenient. That is convenient. If there's going to be a
Extremely
big dance
convenient.
number, at least let you all get to act drunk. Gives you an
So
excuse
fun.
to just kind of waddle off at the end. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. And then as for modern dance, that's a completely new experience for me, definitely, is really learning the technique. Because I've done contemporary and lyrical pieces and had some experience in styles of dance outside of classical ballet, but definitely performing pieces like that is totally new because you go into it being like, oh my goodness, I get to relax and, do this natural movement and it's just going to be so nice and no, it's really not. It's still very difficult. And I found that a lot of times the flexibility that you develop through ballet really gets called upon in a lot of this modern choreography because you have the freedom to kind of work with different lines and shapes that you're making. And sometimes they're like, oh, hey, you can do the splits or bend yourself in half. We're going to use that. And, it's difficult when you're on stage and you're trying to make everything look really good.
You have an oversplit? Utilize that.
Yeah, we're going to utilize that because, in classical ballet, especially if you're doing repertoire, like classical repertoire, using those same steps that have been performed for hundreds of years at this point.
Yeah.
That isn't called upon because the extreme ballet has only gotten more extreme as time has gone on. But as you're doing a modern piece, you're using the modern body and
Yes.
you're required and expected to really call upon everything that you have.
When
and that definitely plays into performance.
When I was doing the lyrical class with Leaf, for the first half of the time I was taking the class, I wasn't able to even touch my toes. And I found myself constantly limited by flexibility. Still do, even though I don't take the class.
So I know you mentioned, you just said modern body. Now, do you think that it is easier to get into modern for your average person than it is to get into other forms of dancing?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's an interesting question. I really think that anybody can jump into any style of dance. I think that the age that you get into it can sometimes limit what level you can get into or achieve.
Yeah.
But only to a point. I really think that no age is too late to start. And sometimes I feel that dancers people with no dance experience who come into modern often do have an advantage because I was trained for however many years of my life, like 13 years without really strong modern technique. And I was trained to hold my weight a lot higher. I was trained to stand in a particular way. I was trained to turn out. And all these elements that are just so part of me and the way that I move. But then you're required to kind of relearn that and relearn something different. And it can definitely be limiting. And I've had professors come to me and say, hey, you're doing this well, or you're doing this well, but you just need to let go more here. Or you just need to, don't be a ballet dancer for a minute or two, just move. And it's definitely difficult when you've grown up learning a certain way.
Get rid of the inner
So I think in that
bunhead.
way, definitely people with no experience sometimes have an advantage because they're just it's the first thing they're learning.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that because when I first jumped into modern, I obviously had absolutely no dance training, and I noticed when you were teaching modern classes and it was actually like a lot of modern dance, I was better than a lot of the bunheads. Or I might not in the long run, if they really practice that dance again and again and again, then they'll probably end up being better than I am. But just going for it first, just first try, just send it. I noticed I was a touch better. But then when, I get into more ballet, more classical stuff, I absolutely am destroyed.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and anybody who just has the desire to just move into dance, it's definitely a good place to start because you can just fall in love with it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes ballet can get discouraging, depending on where you're at in life and how motivated you are and what teacher you have. But modern dances and even contemporary and I hate to use the word hip hop because it's not really necessarily a style. It's more of a culture. But that style is also really, really fun for people who don't have a lot of dance experience because it's just fun. It's really fun to perform. It's fun to learn.
So now, what's the dance style that Michael Jackson popularized?
That was pop dance, not like pop music, but like it's called pop.
Okay, that I have to say is my favorite dance to watch. That really controlled, like, it looks like you're almost floating on the stage.
Did we tell you, or did you see, Sarah, that the other month at the college there was a guy, Snap Boogie is his stage name, and he did some tap dance. He also did some pop dance and stuff.
Oh, I did not see that. That sounds so cool, though. Good job, Ethel.
It was super cool to watch.
Someone cool.
Yeah, he actually made it to the finals of America's Got Talent.
Semifinals. America's Got Talent. Back in like 2006 or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, he's excellent
it was
dancer.
So cool to watch.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he had the whole audience play musical chairs while he DJ'd.
Yeah.
It was great.
That's awesome. I love that. That's so cool.
Yep. No, he was such a really personal guy. I've DM'd him a couple of times. But anyhow, we're kind of straying here a little bit. I know this is a very conversational, relaxed mood, but I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the technical aspect of putting on a theater production. So there is so much that goes into this. There is obviously all the planning, but once you get to your performance space, you have a whole tech rehearsal or 2 tech rehearsals or more.
And then dress rehearsals.
Or, preferably a tech week. So
yeah.
Also known as Hell Week among theater people.
So with musical theater, I know there's a very complex part of this is audio. And that can get fun. We've had in performances we put on, in Music Man, we had some audio screw ups.
Yeah, like when my hat fell over my mic. Oh my gosh, that first night performance was not good.
Well, you know what? You just gotta go with it. That's not my.
That's why I raised my voice 80 decibels and projected as loud as I could because I could hear my mic wasn't working quite right.
I know that was funny. Sometimes on stage, you'll hear people yelling or shouting, and you're like, why? Oh, their microphone's probably off or covered.
Yeah.
Yep. I've come off stage hoarse before because my microphone levels were too low, and I'm like, nobody could hear me, so I'm just gonna scream into the microphone.
Throat coat tea.
Yeah. So, is there a big difference in the technical aspect between putting on a primarily dance performance and then a musical theater performance?
Yeah, I'd say that it's definitely, it can sometimes be a little bit easier in dance because you aren't working with the element of microphones. I think that can definitely get technically difficult because you're just trying to balance the levels of however many people you have mic'd on stage and trying to balance that with the audio that's happening versus the natural noise that's coming from on stage.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole nother element. that I think you don't necessarily have to worry about in a traditional dance performance. It tends to be just audio or just music or sound that's being projected to the audience.
Yeah.
And I think that can definitely be easier. However, I think it can sometimes add an extra level of pressure, though, because the dances are so based on the music, and if something comes in at a wrong time or if something is cut off too short, that can affect what your dancers are doing on stage because they're working off that music normally. And so whereas like in a musical theater performance, if your music cuts out, your actors can just keep singing. But you know, it's not always that way when you're in a dance performance.
Well, take the first performance we did of The Music Man. The song, the first song came in way too early, so we had to substitute lines after the song. And then there was a curtain that didn't go down.
Oh, that was several times.
Yeah, several times. And so, you know, Lee runs on half naked, like shirt off, ready to. I'm like, dude, check if the curtain's down first. And then he ran back off. He was shirtless with a hat over his face.
I don't remember the shirtless part. Maybe I blocked that from my memory, but I definitely remember him running on, freezing like a deer in headlights, and then running back off.
Yeah, that was funny. Tip, guys.
Part of that, like that's why I feel like it's so important for every performer. If you're going to go into performing, you should at least have some sort of musical theater or dance because it's so good. Just the mishaps that happen on stage.
Oh,
and then, you know, when you're like mid, you know, triple pirouette and your music cuts out, like, you need to know what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
You know, and having that resourcefulness is really good, and just knowing how to deal with it. It's live. It's live entertainment.
Have you ever had a memorable mishap like that you had to smooth over in a dance production?
Oh yes. I mean, we've had times where I think a lot of times the mishaps tend to be major delays in audio cutting in, or lighting cues. It tends to just be delays because I think another part of it depends who you're working with, but if you have a light and a sound crew who aren't necessarily well versed in a dance production, or maybe it's their first time doing that, and like good for them, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult because you're not working with, you know, when, you know, John says get out, then, you know, the lights go out, but all they have to go off of is, you know, when 3 girls downstage finish, you know, their pirouettes and then they land in fourth, you know, the front lights should go out. Like, they don't know what you're talking about. And so I think that's mostly what we've experienced is just delays, where you either have to really draw something out or really, I suppose, like accentuate something so that it kind of fills that music or fills the light, literally. If your lights don't go out or they don't come on, or your music isn't coming in when it needs to.
You just gotta
it's definitely where I think.
You just gotta make sure you don't look like a deer in headlights. Like, what do I do?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, how many years ago was it that we did the studio did the performance about behind the scenes of productions? What was that called?
Oh, that was interesting. That was called A Work of Art, or The Work of Art.
Yeah.
And that was 2 years ago. So it was my junior year.
That was the first year that Felicia, my sister, wasn't there. And so I never actually saw that performance, but I heard it was amazing.
Oh, it was. It was great. So that performance, it talked a lot about auditions. And those, there are different types of auditions. People might be surprised to hear about some of these different forms of auditions and how harsh they can be. So, describe some auditions that you have done, different types of them.
Oh, different types. I would say most of my professional audition experience has been dance auditions. I had a very, very intense audition season last year during November and February and March of last year, auditioning for college programs as a dance major. It really varies from program to program, but normally you're going in with in your leotard and your tights and your number, and you take a ballet class. Even if the program isn't necessarily ballet based, you're normally going to be taking a class because your ballet technique really shows a lot of how technical you are as a dancer in general. And they can see a lot. They can see your flexibility, they can see your mobility, they can see your artistry, and what you really have to offer through that. And then a lot of programs will have a cut after that ballet class. So if they see you and they see your performance and they're like, well, we don't think you're right for this program, or, you know, we don't have a spot for this certain type of dancer. A lot of times programs will have concentrations where they'll have you're a dance major, but you're going to focus in contemporary, or you're a dance major, but you're going to focus in ballet performance or choreography. And if they see that you're a certain type of dancer and they don't have enough spots, then that is another reason why you could get cut. And then often you're going to be presenting a solo for them. If you get past that first cut, is you'll walk in with your music, you'll say your name, what your music is, you will perform, and then you will leave. And that's pretty standard. That's what I've encountered a lot of times. And then auditions are also interesting because you're going into it. I think what's so interesting with auditioning for almost anything, especially in dance, is that you're auditioning for something to have the opportunity to learn. So you really have to show these people that you love what you're doing and that you also have room for improvement, I suppose, which is interesting to try and present in an audition because you want to be perfect. But you have to keep in mind that they're trying to see people that they know that they can develop and that they can help improve. And that's something you really want to consider when you're auditioning for a summer program, because that's the point. You're going for extra training.
What is your most memorable audition? What was it for, and why is it so memorable?
Oh my goodness, my most memorable audition. Trying to think for like college programs. Oh, probably my audition for the dance program at Butler, which is a primarily business school. It's a private business school in Indianapolis. And I went out there in November. It would have been technically 2 years ago now, with my mother to audition for the program. And it was the most intense experience that I have ever had. We got there early, which was nice. However, it's very nerve-wracking because you're sitting out there for an hour and a half, I suppose, before you're even let in, to really let the nerves work up.
With all the other people that look exactly like you.
Exactly. That's another part. That's another really interesting part of these auditions because especially for a classical ballet program, they have a dress code for the audition. You come in a black leotard and pink tights. So you look exactly like everybody else. And it's up to you to really showcase what you have. And keep in mind, this was my first college audition. This was my first real audition, I suppose. And it was definitely scary. So we come in and we had the director of the program speak to us. Lovely man. Really lovely man. Very encouraging. I didn't listen to most of it. I was, but I know he said a lot of really lovely, encouraging things about how, we're all going to have really bright futures, and he hopes we'll all be placed where we need to be. Basically, we're only going to take maybe like 2% of you, but it was a very nerve-wracking experience. And so then, they kick all of our parents out, which obviously you have to. And then we set all of our things aside and we go line up at the bar. And if you've been in a ballet class, you know that depending on where you stand, depends how much I suppose you can quote unquote cheat about the combination. Because teachers, at this level, they're not going to give you the combination 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I got put at the end of the bar, so there was nobody in front of me for the very first side.
Oh.
And the teacher, I found out later, she's such a talented lady. I had researched the program beforehand, and I knew who she was. Talented, lovely woman. And I believe she is Puerto Rican. So I could not understand a word she said. And
Fun.
again, so talented, so amazing. But she had a very, very strong accent, and I couldn't understand anything.
Yeah.
So that definitely didn't help. And I had nobody in front of me. So let's just say bar was difficult. Bar was tough. And it just, it didn't get too much better. I did my best. I did fine. I did end up later on getting into the program, which was really amazing. I didn't end up going there. However, I did later on end up getting in, but it was an incredibly nerve-wracking audition experience, and one that I will never forget.
Are you generally nervous for auditions?
I am not anymore, I don't think. After however many I did, 6, I think I ended up doing 7 college auditions. And after that, I got pretty immune. I'm sure that there will come a time in my life where I will walk into an audition completely petrified, but thankfully, as of the ones that I've been in most recently, I'm really not nervous anymore.
What about performances?
I think I have a lot better mindset about it. Coming from a place of knowing that, your audition panel really just wants you to be great. And they just want to know that you're happy to be there and that you're excited and that you're willing to work.
Yep. They aren't mean.
What about
They really aren't. They really aren't.
What about stage performances? Are you generally nervous for those?
I am not. I'm really not. I am just always so excited to get on stage. I really like it.
I don't know. This kind of sounds weird, but I kind of like being baked under the stage lights. Do you like that too? I like having the stage lights shining on me. It's so much fun. And
it's a really cool feeling, and I think it's something that it's hard to describe, but there's something about it, and that it's time to perform, and I don't know, it's really great every time.
I mean, for those,
it never gets old.
Yeah, for those listening who have never been on a stage, stage lights are very, very hot. And when you're wearing a bunch of clothing
and dancing
it gets really, really hot, and it'll hit upper 80s on stage, which is kind of crazy. But there's something about that. You're on stage, you're in your element. I don't know. It's so invigorating, and you just get sort of the second wind. And I feel like I could go forever on a stage and never tire.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So that's something I definitely see is I'm better on stage than in performance, or even in auditions, I'm worse than when I am on stage at a live performance. Because when you've seen my rehearsals, sometimes I'm kind of dry in my acting almost. And then when I get on stage, I can really, let it loose, really get into character. And I just have a hard time doing that in the auditions and in the rehearsal. And I noticed that's at first, my first year doing theater, that really affected me because Mrs. Siegfried was thinking, oh, he's not as good of an actor, or he can't really do this as well. Then
I don't think that anyone who saw you rehearsing as Fagin would say that you were acting dryly. Okay, not dryly. but Mrs. Siegfried said after the performance, she's like, you just added 10% to your performance there. And I was like, yeah, that's how I work. So I don't know. Do you get any of that? Are you better on stage than in rehearsal, or vice versa, or about the same?
I definitely feel that way when it comes to musical theater. I think I have a lot of trouble sometimes really, really getting into a character. And I think that can be part of just the fact that maybe acting isn't my forte. It's not what I'm absolutely best at. And so I suppose I don't put as much energy, I think, as I could into rehearsals. And I know that now if I were to go into a show, I would probably approach it very differently than I did a few years ago, just because of the experiences that I've had since and from what I've learned. But definitely once you get on stage, and even it just becomes a different world there, because depending on your rehearsal space, it can get, I mean, you're just there every day, and it's just what you're practicing, and you're learning your lines or your music or your steps, and you're doing your blocking. And you're like, okay, well, this is what we do, and we're eventually preparing for a performance. But once you get to your space, or if you have the ability to be working in your space all the time, where you're going to be performing, and you get there and everybody's got their costume on, and the makeup sometimes has a really big impact.
Definitely.
And it just becomes a different world. And it's something about live theater that is part of why I think even the audience appreciates it so much, is that we're all so invested in it. And it really makes a difference in everybody's performance.
When I watch a recording of live theater, I always am thinking to myself, I'd rather watch a movie of this, because movies are polished, they're perfect, there's nothing that can go wrong. But then with a live performance, when you're watching a video, you have that movie expectation, but you're getting a live performance, but you're not getting the live part of it, that emotional experience of being there and at the show.
Stage.
Yeah. Like I remember coming off the stage and marching around holding, I forget what I was holding. I think
it was your conductor's baton.
Yeah, conductor's baton in The Music Man, and passing in by the front row, and there was a line of really, really little kids, and they were just stunned to see actors right there. And I even knew some of them. I've taught some of them at Forest School, and they knew me, but then to see me in a different character, it was something, it was completely different, and they were so excited to see that. And it's just that live, that emotional response to seeing that live performance. You just can't mimic it, really.
Yeah.
Well,
we've gone far over an hour.
No, we haven't, really.
Yeah, it's been like an hour 15.
Oh, well, you know what?
Oh, hour and hour and 6 seconds.
Hour and 6 seconds. See, that's what I thought. Well, we kind of ended our last podcast, episode 1, at about an hour.
Okay.
It was. I think we've talked out the subject. I feel like we naturally came to an end here. I know there's more to talk about, but I feel like we've covered a lot. Thank you for coming on, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's
of course.
It's great to have you part of the beginning of this. I hope we go somewhere with this, but it's great to have people who are willing to come onto a relatively unknown podcast.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah, and you got a lot to add there, because between the two of us, we've only had how many performances? On 5, and I don't know, you've been on stage dozens of times, so it's thank you again. And you know what, maybe in a future episode we can feature you again, and we can be talking about something completely different. Yep.
Yeah, sure. I'm very excited for you guys. This is super fun. I love this. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. It's a lot of fun. All right. Well, I guess we shall wrap it up here. Thank you for watching episode 2 of the podcast. If you want to support us, I have a Patreon link in the description. And if you have any suggestions, please shoot us an email at ctwmailbox@gmail.com. Again, that is ctwmailbox@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening all the way through, and we shall see you next week.
Thanks again, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. All right.